The story begins when a married couple, John and Julia, decide to visit a tourist island called Rarotonga. Their goal isn't just a vacation, but also to discuss an investment plan, building a luxury resort on the island. Rarotonga is the largest island in the Cook Islands, located in the South Pacific Ocean between French Polynesia and Fiji. The island is well known for its untouched natural beauty. Upon arriving at the airport, John and Julia are welcomed by William, the hotel manager who will be Julia's partner in the resort project. The project itself has already sparked pros and cons among the local residents. Many are worried the development will damage the natural balance, and local media coverage has only made things more heated. When they arrive at the hotel, they meet Anita, a friendly and warm receptionist.
Would put her around to the side. It's an important document.
But from the very beginning, Julia seems more focused on business matters than on spending time with John. John, who was hoping for a romantic vacation, feels a bit neglected. The next day, Julia calls her father, Trevor, a successful businessman in the plastic industry in the United States. From their conversation, it's revealed that Trevor never approved of Julia's marriage to John. He believes John is just relying on Julia's wealth without making any real contribution.
Already.
After that, Julia heads to the dock to inspect the small island that will become the resort location. Julia thinks she'll be boarding a large ship, but instead, William introduces her to Robbie, the captain of a small boat, and a crew member named Sid.
Ahoy, Captain.
Hello.
The journey begins. Out at sea, Sid receives a warning about a major storm coming to the area. Unfortunately, Robbie ignores the warning and insists on continuing the trip. That decision later becomes the start of a disaster. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, two police officers named Roy and Brooke arrive looking for Sid, who turns out to be a fugitive wanted in a murder case. Anita claims she doesn't know Sid and has never seen him. After work, Anita meets John, who is walking around the hotel. John wants to find a special gift for Julia, but doesn't know what item is unique to the island.
Anita,
Wonderful.
I have something perfect in mind.
Anita happily takes him around to enjoy the views of Rarotonga, then brings him to a jewelry shop. There, John buys a black pearl necklace typical of the area as a gift. Meanwhile, on the boat, Julia starts to feel seasick. Robbie suggests that she rest in the cabin. Before long, the weather changes drastically. The sky darkens, and a weather report on television warns that a major storm is approaching.
Heavy rain.
While in a weakened condition, Julia is suddenly confronted by Sid, who urges her to leave the boat immediately. It turns out all the cabin doors have been locked from the outside by Robbie. Luckily, Sid finds a way out through a window. Sid forces Julia to jump into the sea to save herself. That reckless decision leads them into an even more dangerous situation. The next day, Julia wakes up on a remote island that looks wild and uninhabited. In a panic, Julia looks around while calling out for the ship's captain.
Captain!
A small sense of relief comes over Julia when she sees Sid not far from her. Julia immediately asks about the boat and Robbie, but Sid doesn't answer at all. At first, Julia thinks Sid can't speak, but in reality, Sid is focused on figuring out how to survive.
Water! I'm stuck here with him.
Sid realizes they need shelter, clean water, and food in order to stay alive. Without saying much, Sid heads into the forest to gather simple materials to build a shelter. Julia, who isn't used to living in the wild, feels scared and keeps following Sid closely. Julia repeatedly says their efforts are pointless, because a rescue team will definitely come soon. However, as the sun starts to set and darkness covers the island, Julia realizes one thing. She has no choice but to accept the reality that, for now, this island is her world. Meanwhile, in Rarotonga, John receives bad news from William about the disappearance of the boat carrying Julia. John immediately goes to the Coast Guard office and meets an officer named Tony, who promises to conduct a full-scale search. John also contacts Trevor, Julia's father. Shocked, Trevor immediately prepares to head to
I don't want
Rarotonga.
you to worry too much.
The first few days on the island are extremely hard for Julia. As a woman who has lived in luxury, surviving in the wild is a completely unfamiliar and frightening experience for her. The next morning, Sid gets ready to climb to higher ground, hoping to see a wider view of the island and figure out their location. Along the way, Julia keeps complaining about being hungry. Sid then gives her a sugarcane stalk to chew on so she can keep her strength up.
What am I meant to do?
On the other side, John and Anita continue waiting for news from the rescue team. Anita then reveals something to John. Sid is actually her brother-in-law. When they reach the top, Sid realizes something worrying. He doesn't recognize this island at all.
That's what I wanted to hear.
On the way back down, Sid hears the sound of running water. They're lucky to find a freshwater source. Julia uses it to clean herself, but Sid reminds her to be quick, because night is coming soon. When they return to the shelter, Julia slips and injures her leg. Sid is forced to search the forest for medicinal leaves, then slowly helps Julia walk.
Hurt a little.
In Rarotonga, John and William hold a meeting with the local residents about the resort project. A resident named Benny openly speaks out against the plan, worried that it will damage the environment. William tries to convince the people with promises of economic growth, but the debate continues. In the end, John himself promises that he will protect and preserve the island's natural
But
environment.
I'd like to do everything in my power to make this island, but for generations.
Not long after that, Anita brings shocking news. The Coast Guard has managed to find Robbie alive. Robbie claims he was thrown off the boat and doesn't know what happened to Julia and
When is
Sid.
the last time
I saw her was when I sent her.
if you survived?
Then Julia or Sid.
Back on the island, a desperate Julia tries to make an SOS sign out of coconuts on the beach, hoping it can be seen from the air. But Sid says the effort might be pointless, since planes rarely pass through this area. Sure enough, the waves come in and wash away the SOS sign. Julia becomes even more frustrated and feels helpless. Seeing Julia's condition, Sid tries to calm her down. Sid treats Julia's sunburned skin, and in the calmer moment, Sid begins to talk about his past, including his wife who has passed away. The story, though sad, makes Julia feel a little stronger mentally. Not wanting to stay trapped forever, Sid finally reveals a plan. Sid believes the only way back to Rarotonga is by building a simple raft. Sid starts teaching Julia how to tie the bamboo together and secure it tightly so it can float. Even though she's unsure, Julia begins to hope that this raft could be their way home. The scene then shifts to Rarotonga Airport. Trevor, Julia's father, finally arrives with a face full of anger and deep concern for his daughter's safety. Meanwhile, on the remote island, Sid and Julia decide to test their homemade raft. While Sid dives around the shallow waters near the shore to check the depth and water conditions, Sid accidentally finds a large shell. Inside it, a beautiful black pearl is hidden.
The food.
That night, under a star-filled sky, Julia starts to open up. Julia expresses her regret for being too focused on work all this time, often ignoring the feelings of the people around her, including John. As a small comfort, Sid gives Julia the black pearl he found earlier. That simple moment becomes a point where they both feel closer and more connected. The next day in Rarotonga, Anita accidentally sees John talking privately with Robbie in a somewhat hidden spot. Anita watches John hand over a sum of money to Robbie. The scene makes Anita suspicious, wondering if John paid Robbie to harm Julia. However, John denies it. John explains that the money is just compensation so Robbie can buy a new boat, not something evil like Anita suspects. Back on the island, since their previous raft test went fairly well, Sid and Julia decide to actually try sailing away from the island. Unfortunately, The plan is immediately blocked when a shark appears near the raft. Sid quickly tells Julia to head back to shore while Sid tries to distract the shark. They both survive, but Sid's leg is badly injured because of the incident.
Are you okay?
On another day, while Sid is trying to catch fish, Julia spots a floating box near the shoreline.
There's a shark!
Sid takes it and opens the box. Inside is emergency survival gear, including a flare gun and a satellite phone. Using the satellite phone, Julia immediately calls John. Julia tells him that they're still alive and asks for help to be sent right away. However, when the call comes in, John is spending time with Anita. Julia's voicemail isn't heard by him until several hours later. John's delay in listening to the emergency message further strengthens Anita's suspicions about Julia's husband's true intentions. Sometime later, Julia sees a ship approaching the waters near the island. Julia quickly asks Sid to fire the flare gun as a distress signal. It turns out the ship belongs to Robbie and his crew. Robbie finally finds Sid and Julia on the beach.
No, I'm not.
But instead of helping, Robbie accuses Sid of being a police fugitive. Robbie even rudely says that Julia should have died back when she was left on the boat. The situation quickly becomes heated. Sid is forced to fight back against Robbie. With Julia's help, smashing Robbie on the head with a coconut, they manage to subdue him. Sid and Julia immediately board the ship, then force Robbie's crew to take them back to Rarotonga. At the same time, Roy and Brooke at the Coast Guard office hear Sid's voice over the radio. Sid informs them that he and Julia are on their way back.
Who was with you?
To have the police standing by.
As soon as they arrive at the dock, Sid hands Robbie's crew over to the authorities. But surprisingly, Roy also arrests Sid. Sid is accused of being involved in a murder case. It's revealed that Sid was once a doctor who was accused of committing malpractice on his own wife, which led to her death.
I don't want to hear.
Oh!
The next day, Julia goes to see her father, Trevor. She begs Trevor to be willing to act as a guarantor to get Sid released. Julia believes Sid is not a murderer, because during their time on the remote island, Sid kept saving her and taking care of her with great patience.
Hurt a little.
Thank you, Daddy.
Meanwhile, William brings up the resort development project again. Benny, a local resident, suddenly presents solid evidence that the project could permanently damage the environment. Benny's explanation finally opens Julia's eyes. She decides to completely change the development plan, making it more eco-friendly and sustainable. At the same time, Anita, who is at a bar, accidentally sees John stealing a bottle of wine from the shelf. John realizes he's been seen, then forces Anita into a room and attacks her. After knocking Anita unconscious, John locks her inside a closet. John then injects poison into the wine bottle, which he plans to give to Julia. However, Anita is actually just pretending to be unconscious. Once John leaves, Anita manages to get out of the closet and immediately looks for Sid. Anita tells Sid about John's evil plan to poison Julia. As planned, John later meets with Julia and Trevor. John pours the wine for Julia.
Cheers.
Sid arrives just in time to stop him. At first, Julia refuses to believe the accusation and instead drives Sid away. Anita then tells the truth about Sid's past, that Sid once removed his critically ill wife from life support in order to end her suffering. That's why Sid was accused of murder. Hearing this explanation, Trevor challenges John to drink the wine he poured himself. When John panics and refuses, Julia finally realizes the bitter truth. Julia understands that her own husband intended to kill her. After everything is revealed, Julia is overwhelmed with deep regret for choosing the wrong man all this time. From everything that has happened, Julia finally realizes who truly loves her and sincerely protects her. The next day, Julia goes to see Sid with a new determination. to start a life together with a more open heart and full of hope.